You've been here before. You don't know when, you don't know how, but you recognize the carpet. Yellowed, industrial, the kind that absorbs sound like snow absorbs screaming. The hallway shouldn't bend this way. The ceiling shouldn't hum. And somewhere behind you, where there used to be a door, there's only more hallway now. Tonight, we're walking into the spaces between. The places that feel wrong, because they are wrong. The thresholds you were never meant to cross. It started with a single photograph, posted anonymously. No context, no explanation. Just an image of an empty office space that made people physically uncomfortable. Within months, millions were searching for more. By years, Hollywood came calling. A teenager would become the youngest director in A24's history, all because of an empty room. They call them liminal spaces. And they've become the defining horror of our generation. Not monsters. Not ghosts. Just emptiness. Just wrong. The word liminal comes from the Latin limen, meaning threshold. A doorway. A point of transition. The space between where you were and where you're going. Anthropologists have studied liminality for over a century. It describes those disorienting phases when the old rules no longer apply and new ones haven't been written yet. Think of airports at 3 a.m. Hotel hallways where every door looks the same. The parking garage you suddenly can't remember which level you parked on. These places exist everywhere. We pass through them constantly. But we're not supposed to stay. We're not supposed to notice them watching us. On May 12, 2019, an anonymous user posted an image to 4chan's paranormal board. No caption. Just a photograph of an office space with yellowed carpet and fluorescent lights. The response was immediate. Comments flooded in from people who swore they'd seen this place before. In dreams, in memories they couldn't quite place, in the corners of childhood recollections. Someone added a caption that would define a new horror mythology. If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms. In May 2024, researchers traced the original photograph to its source. It was taken in March 2003, during the renovation of a former furniture store in Wisconsin. A mundane photograph. A furniture store being gutted. Nothing supernatural. Nothing designed to disturb. And yet millions found it terrifying beyond explanation. The backrooms spread like a contagion through Reddit, then TikTok, then everywhere else. Users began building lore. Levels, entities, rules for survival in spaces that shouldn't exist. The hashtag liminal spaces has accumulated nearly 100 million views on TikTok alone. Not horror movies. Not jump scares. Just photographs of empty places. People began hunting for their own liminal spaces. Photographing dead malls at closing time. Sneaking into stairwells they had no business entering. Documenting the threshold. Psychologists, Alexander Dial and Michael Lewis of Cardiff University, studied why these images provoke such visceral reactions. Their answer: the uncanny valley. We know the uncanny valley from robots and CGI humans. Faces that are almost right but somehow wrong. Liminal spaces trigger the same response, places that are almost familiar but subtly off. The horror, researchers found, was derived from subtle wrongness present in liminal spaces. Our brains recognize something is missing. They just can't articulate what. Here's what's missing. People. Activity. Purpose. These spaces were designed for crowds, for commerce, for connection. Seeing them empty violates our deepest expectations. Professor Tom Lever from Cardiff University calls it the eerie feeling of familiarity. We know these places. We've been in hundreds of them, but never like this. Never alone. In January 2022, a 16-year-old filmmaker named Kane Parsons uploaded a short film to YouTube. 9 minutes of found footage, a camera moving through impossible spaces. The video was titled simply, "The Backrooms, Found Footage." It showed no monsters for most of its runtime. Just endless corridors, flickering lights. The sense that something was watching. Kane Parsons' video has now surpassed 71 million views. He became one of the most watched horror filmmakers on the platform. He was still in high school. A24, the studio behind Hereditary, Midsommar, and Everything Everywhere All at Once, signed Parsons to direct a feature film. He became the youngest director in the company's history. A teenager. A photograph from a furniture store renovation. An anonymous internet post. This is how horror evolves now. Not from studios, but from shared fears we didn't know we had. The influence spread beyond film. Dan Erickson, creator of the critically acclaimed series Severance, named The Backrooms as one of his inspirations for the show's unsettling office corridors. Severance captures the same dread. The fluorescent oppression, the endless sameness, the feeling that the building itself might be conscious, that the walls might be listening. Indie game developers embraced the aesthetic. Dozens of Backrooms games flooded Steam and itch, first-person explorations of impossible architectures and the loneliness within. Game Developer magazine identified what makes these games work. The subliminal menace of loneliness. No enemy needed, no threat required, just isolation made manifest. But here's the question that keeps researchers awake. Why now? Empty spaces have always existed. Dead malls, closed schools. Why did they become terrifying in 2019? Some theorists point to late capitalism, the abandoned promise of shopping centers that were supposed to be community spaces, now hollowed out and left to decay. Others see generational grief. Millennials and Gen Z grew up in these spaces. The malls, the office parks, the fluorescent-lit promise of suburban prosperity. Now they're documenting its collapse. The pandemic didn't create liminal space horror, but it accelerated everything. Suddenly everyone understood what it meant to exist in threshold, between the old world and whatever came next. Research from Indiana University's folklore department found that Backrooms lore spread primarily through collaborative storytelling. Users adding levels, entities, and rules to an ever-expanding mythology. Level 0. The original yellow rooms. Level 1. A massive warehouse that goes on forever. Level 2. Dark maintenance tunnels filled with pipes and dripping water. Each level has rules. Stay in the light. Don't make noise. If you hear humming, run. If you see yourself in the distance, don't approach. The lore writes itself. And the entities. Things that live in the backrooms. Things that were once people, or things that only look like people. Smilers. Facelings. The partygoers who want you to join them forever. But here's what separates liminal horror from traditional scares. The entities often don't appear at all. The emptiness itself is the monster. The wrongness is the threat. Traditional horror asks, what's hiding in the dark? Liminal horror asks something worse. What if there's nothing there at all? What if the emptiness is all there is? This is horror for the lonely generation. The one that grew up with connection constantly available, but community constantly receding. Alone together. Together alone. We built spaces for gathering, and then abandoned them. We created infinite digital connections and felt more isolated than ever. The backrooms are a mirror. Not everyone finds liminal spaces terrifying. Research suggests individual differences play a role, particularly something called need for cognitive closure. How much ambiguity can you tolerate? Some people find empty swimming pools peaceful, abandoned malls meditative, hotel hallways at 3 a.m. calming rather than disturbing. The threshold welcomes them instead of threatening. For these viewers, liminal spaces represent freedom from social obligation. No one watching, no one waiting, no performance required. Just space to exist without witness. Maybe that's the deepest truth the backrooms reveal. Our relationship with emptiness says everything about our relationship with ourselves. What we fear, what we crave. Notice the liminal spaces in your own life. The parking garage at midnight. The office after everyone leaves. The hallway between your door and the elevator. Pay attention to how these spaces make you feel. Anxious? Peaceful? Do you hurry through or linger? Your response tells you something about what you carry. If you create content, understand that liminal horror works through suggestion and absence. The scariest thing you can show is nothing at all. Let imagination fill the void. The next time you're somewhere that feels wrong, don't immediately leave. Sit with the discomfort. Ask why. The architecture of unease has something to teach you. The backrooms will continue to expand. More levels. More entities. More rules. That's how collaborative mythology works. It grows to fill the emptiness, just like our fears do. Kane Parsons is somewhere in pre-production right now, building movie monsters from our collective nightmares. The furniture store in Wisconsin is probably a coffee shop by now, but the image persists. The yellow carpet, the fluorescent hum, the certainty that you've been there before, even though you know you haven't, the wrongness that won't let go. Every closed mall is a portal now. Every empty stairwell a threshold. We taught ourselves to see the horror in ordinary places, and now we can't unsee it. The internet didn't invent liminal spaces. It just gave us a word for something we've always felt. That shiver in empty places, that sense of being watched by nothing at all. And maybe that's why the backrooms resonate so deeply. They're not about monsters or ghosts or anything external. They're about what we feel when the world empties out. We're all standing in thresholds now. Between the world we knew and whatever's coming. Between connection and isolation. Between familiar and wrong. The backrooms were never about a furniture store in Wisconsin. They were about us. What we built, what we abandoned, what we're afraid to find when we're finally alone. So the next time you're somewhere that feels wrong, an empty hallway, a parking garage at midnight, a room that shouldn't be there, pay attention. The threshold is trying to tell you something. About where you are. About where you're going. About what waits in the spaces between. This has been Night Shift Stories. The carpet stretches on forever here. The lights never stop humming. And somewhere, behind you, another door just disappeared.